I started doing workshops and doing groups where I'm getting up in front of others, like outside of the gym setting, and talking about resilience and perseverance and goal setting and vision and taking action. You should know what 1 hour of your time is worth. You should know the value that you bring to the marketplace. You know what your passion is. Starts with clarity of vision. If you don't have the clarity of vision, whatever next thing you get, you're not going to see it through because you don't have the clarity of vision. So the point of my pain was being told you will never run or jump again. And all that stuff, I was like, you know what? Like, I want to be able to take this even bigger. If you know why you do what you do, you have to know how to charge for what you do. That's how you're going to change your life, and that's how you're going to leave a legacy for your children and your family. You got to know your worth. Happy Thursday, ladies and gentlemen. This is Rob, and I'm back with episode number 380 of Shut Up and Grind. We're all about overcoming obstacles, defying the odds, and inspiring you, yes, you, to clear what's ever blocking the path to whatever success you want in this lifetime. So, before I bring on my guest, I got to talk to you, the person who's sitting there, and you're doubting yourself, and you're unsure of what you want. You're unsure of who you are as a person. You're unsure of your core beliefs. You're unsure of your core values. I want to tell you two words that's going to absolutely change your life. Stop it. Okay, just stop it. You were not put on this earth to play small. You were put on this earth with gifts. And somewhere along your life, your gifts got taken from you. Your wings were clipped. You were thrown off track. And I started this show because that happened to me. My life was thrown off track, and I was able to get back on. And now I bring guests on from all over the world to talk about how they were thrown off track and how they were able to get back on track. So once you stop beating yourself up, once you stop doubting yourself, and once you start putting yourself first, yes, even if you're a parent, you got to put yourself first because your kids are going to see the example that you put forth. But once you start putting yourself first, all the opportunities that are out there are going to show up, and they're going to be waving at you saying, hi, how are you? All right. So that's today's tip. We're going to be talking about reclaiming pleasure, power, and connection. Don't worry, we're going to keep it clean. But helping me have this conversation, I saw the eye roll. Even though you're backstage, I still saw the eye roll. All right, helping me have this conversation is Xanet, and her work blends psychology, somatic healing, tantra, and real-world experience to help people break free from patterns of numbness, avoidance, and emotional shutdown. She's helped hundreds of couples reignite passion, repair trust, and find joy in connection again. Xanet, welcome to the show. How we doing?
I'm doing great, Robert. Thanks so much for having me here. I'm excited to talk about this, something I'm super passionate about, how to reclaim your desire, how to improve your love life.
Love it. Where you joining me from?
I'm in Asheville, North Carolina.
Asheville. I like Asheville. I was there a few years ago for a Spartan race.
Beautiful here.
Let's see. Are you originally from there?
New York.
New York. I should have known with the accent. I should have known. But you definitely don't have the North Carolina Southern draw.
So true, that's true. But I don't have the New York accent either. So
a little bit. All right, let's dive in. So, how would you describe yourself?
At my core, or just in general? At my core. I think at my core, I am a truth teller.
Okay. I like that. Expand on that for me.
Well, part of it is just being a New Yorker, I think. I don't beat around the bush. I tell the truth. I tell people things that maybe they don't want to hear in the kindest, most compassionate way. But I tell the truth about my own life and my own experience. And I hold myself to a really high standard about being a truth teller, because I feel like that's really important for people to understand. There's so many people in this world who just feed you a lot of nonsense, and that's not helpful.
Agreed, agreed. So before we dive into the main topic, I want to spend a couple minutes on that because I think that's so huge. And it starts with the lies that people tell themselves.
Yes.
Starting there, like a lot of people get lost and they lose their identity because of the lie that they're telling themselves. So what are your thoughts on
Oh, well, I told myself a whole lot of lies. I was a really good liar. I lied about how broken I felt. I lied about how unhappy I was in a 26-year sexless marriage. I lied, and I don't even think this was conscious, but I lied about how distraught I was when my dad died at a very young age, and I was at a very young age. So I was really good at shoving all that down and just constantly lying to myself, lying to myself, lying to myself. And I think, we do that because it's a defense mechanism. We don't want to feel that pain. So it's easier just to lie to yourself and tell yourself everything's okay, but it's often not.
that? Okay, so don't think I'm gonna just gloss over that 26-year sexless marriage thing, but we'll get to that. Okay,
Yeah.
we'll get to that. All right, so when did you get to the point to when you were like, I need to stop lying to myself?
Um, I think the point in which I decided I needed to stop lying to myself, it happened a little bit gradually, but this was, I was married, I was living in New York, I was in this sexless marriage for decades, and I started going to Unity Church. Now, I'm Jewish by religion, but I loved Unity Church in New York because I'm a Broadway fanatic. And Unity Church in New York is basically like a Broadway show every Sunday. But one of the things that really struck me about Unity was like really looking at what's going on inside of you and being honest about your feelings. And I'll never forget this one, like probably towards the end of the year, they had us write, a letter to ourselves about how we would like our life to be the next year, sort of a retrospective letter looking back. And the letter I wrote was like, I'm out of my marriage and I'm happier and my ex-husband is happier. And I think that was probably one of the moments when I was like, oh, okay, things need to change. I've been lying to myself all this time, and it's time now to really be the truth teller.
Yeah, I get that. I get that because it's easier to numb than to face.
It is.
So like with my book here, it's about helping people turn past pain into something purposeful.
Mhm.
Rather than just continuing to let the pain hurt you. But the first step is you have to revisit what happened. It's like you have to face that music. Like this is what it is. Like I was married before. I was in a 13-year relationship before, and it's easy to just point the fingers at the other person. Like, oh, well, this one does this and this one does that. And I was like, the common denominator here is me. I was like,
Totally.
so I need to do some soul searching here. I'm like, where am I going wrong here?
Right.
And just really like give myself that harsh reality. It's like maybe you did this and maybe you did that and maybe that's what caused the disconnect. And taking up all of that in is huge, but it's turned me into a better person just from facing that truth. So
Yeah.
so now you start telling yourself the truth, and then so what were your next steps now?
Well, I think my next step was deciding that it was really time to leave the marriage, which, I people often say, when did your story start? And I like to say my story started on my 25th wedding anniversary, where I was at a restaurant in the middle of New York City, sitting across from my spouse. And other than the talking about the kids who were both in college at that point, there was nothing. There was nothing there between us. Just total like silence, like you could cut it with a knife. And it was at that moment that I said to myself, there's not going to be a 26th wedding anniversary. We are really done. And that's really where I feel like my story started. Like that was the real choice that I made at that moment. It took a little while for that to happen, but by my 26th would have been, we signed our separation agreement. So, that happened over that year period of time.
All right, so now I got to ask, 26-year sexless marriage, 26 years? Where was the line drawn?
Well, as with any time there's challenges in a relationship, it's not black and white. There's a lot of gray. And, and I never blame this on my partner. I had a lot of childhood trauma growing up that was not like sexual abuse trauma, but it was sexual shame trauma. So I'll give an example. That's a very innocent example, but it happens to a lot of people. I was caught playing doctor with my best friend, a girl, in first grade, and her mother walked in on us, and I got in so much trouble that that was one of a couple of experiences that made me realize, like, oh, it's not safe. It's not safe to be in my body. Anything around my body feels dirty and anxiety ridden. A couple of other similar type experiences, because I was pretty curious, I guess, as a child around sexuality, but it got shut down and there was a lot of shame associated with it. And I brought that into my first relationship in high school and then my marriage, where for me, because of all of the anxiety, like my body just shut down. So sex was painful. Sex created a lot of drama for me. And that does not make for a good relationship. There's no intimacy when that happens. So, essentially after my second child was born, I graduated law school when I was 24. And then a week later, I got married. And 2 years later, I had my first kid. And 2 years later, I had my second kid. So I was like 28 when I was done. And pretty much we were done at that point, like it just wasn't worth it for either one of us because it was such an uncomfortable and traumatic experience. And I had nobody to turn to. I had no one to talk to say, like, this isn't normal. Doctors at that time were not very sensitive, let's say the least of that. And especially because there were just mostly male doctors. And it was just easier for me to just say, okay, we're done. Not consciously, more subconsciously, but it happened rather quickly. And then, the relationship fell apart as well. It may not have been that strong to begin with. I mean, I think we would both probably re-examine maybe our choices, as we all do, right? After
a good choice of words.
26-year marriage. And because there was no intimacy and there was no vulnerability and there was no emotional safety, all of the things that are really necessary, especially when you're dealing with something as challenging as this, we just became two separate people living in our own separate worlds. But we didn't want to break up the family, and we also didn't ever talk about it. So it was this, hidden thing that we were both kind of miserable, but nobody talked about it. And on the outside, everything was beautiful. We were a very successful couple, 2 lawyers living in a beautiful place in New York City, 2 great kids, and private school, and yada, yada. But the reality was, I think for both of us, we were pretty miserable.
Yeah, and I think in most cases, when relationship ends, it hits that point, especially when there's children involved. Yeah. That it hits that point. Because I definitely stayed in mine years longer than I should have. But you get that guilt. It's like the kids don't ask to be born. The kids don't ask to go through divorce and spend time at dad's house, time at mom's house. Like it's a tough situation. So it's almost, I guess, easier, for a lack of a better term, it's almost easier to try to keep it together, even though you're not happy inside.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's a huge sacrifice. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm like, well, I made this huge sacrifice for my children not to be screwed up, But would I do that again? I don't know. I missed out on a lot, right? Missed out on a lot. 20 years of missing out on a lot.
Wow. I mean, that's definitely a long time.
Yeah.
Right, so you make the decision to walk away. Yeah. Right? Just take me through that process, and then we'll get into how you transition to doing what you're doing now.
Well, I mean, it was pretty easy. We're both lawyers. We literally sat down with a legal pad and we're like, let's divide up the assets. It was a very amicable, pretty much amicable separation. There were no custody battles, of course, because kids were both in college. And then I was faced with the like, oh my God, I've never lived alone by myself. And, I think even though I was very successful, I had my own, at that point, I had my own consulting company, healthcare consulting company. I was very, very scared of living alone. I was very, very scared of a lot of financial insecurity, which was just like in my own head, but it was true. And so, it was scary. It was, I'll never forget moving into my first apartment. And it was just like, oh, I'm in this place I've never been in before. The walls are empty. The pictures aren't up. You think about a home. It has a lot of memories. That was a home that we built. Every single cabinet I picked out, and then you go to this like beautiful apartment, but it's so sterile. And one of my best friends said to me, don't worry. She was like, you're going to create new memories there. There's going to be people that are going to come into your life. Your kids are going to come. These walls will have the same memories. There'll be different memories, but they'll have memories too. And that was very, very comforting. But I spent a lot of nights in the bathtub with a glass of wine or probably a glass of scotch, just crying.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's definitely important to feel what you need to feel. But then how did you start piecing it back together to restore some level of normalcy?
It was a journey. I mean, there were lots of elements of it. An element of it was, I think, a big element of it for me was reestablishing myself. Like, who am I? I've been a mother. I mean, I'm still a mother, but I was a wife. I was a mother. I was a businesswoman. That's pretty much what it was, right? But underneath all of that, who is this person? Like, what does she want? What is she striving for? What's she passionate about? I didn't even know that, right? So there was a lot of examination, of a lot of work that I did internally of like, what do I want to, how do I want to spend the rest of my life? I mean, I was only 50 years old when this happened, right? So what does the rest of my life look like? Like, where do I really want to put my effort? What do I care about? Do I really want to be a lawyer? Do I want to keep on doing this healthcare consulting stuff? Is this really what I'm passionate about? Am I really making like a change in the world that's helpful? And it also caused me, of course, because here I am, I'm 50, I'm relatively attractive. And I think I'm by nature a social person. Like, I want to be in relationship with somebody. So I knew that I had to start, God forbid, dating online, because like that's basically all the options you had at that point. I was terrified about it. I was like, what am I going to say? Like, I'm this awesome woman, super smart, successful. I hate sex. Just that's the one problem here, right? Like, that's not going to go over well in New York City or any place. So I had to really like take a really hard look at like, well, what's going on around my sexuality that I feel so broken, that I don't have pleasure. And I didn't know, to be honest with you, like I had no idea. A lot of my childhood memories I had blocked out, which of course is what we do when we experience trauma. I'm a trauma practitioner as well. And when you experience trauma, right, that's our defense mechanism. We block it out. But slowly those memories started coming back as I started like doing work on it. And I started to see the shame trauma. I started to see the medical trauma that I experienced and started to understand the connection between me being totally emotionally shut down and me being totally sexually shut down. And ever slowly through, you put it in the little blurb, like through Tantra and sacred sexuality, which became my first doorway into some sexual awakening and awareness, things began to slowly, and I mean slowly, start to shift inside of my body, where I began to understand like, oh, this body is here for pleasure. I'm entitled to it. And I can relax into it, and I can get rid of all of the shame that I have and all these stories I have around sexuality and body parts and body image, and start to feel some freedom and some pleasure. It was a process. It's a journey.
Yeah, so one thing that I say a lot, whether it's here in the gym, like I know you can't tell with the screen, but we're sitting in the gym right now. So, but whether it's here, I coach track and field as well, and just out in everyday life, I tell people that the mind controls the body. So whatever you're feeding yourself, your body's going to respond accordingly. So
Right.
like with my athletes, say now with track and field, I'm not a throws coach, right? So, but this is relevant to what you just shared. And so one of my shot putters, I said to her, "How far do you want to throw?" And she's like, "I'm not sure." I'm like, "Then what are you working towards?" It's like, "Why are you out here? Like, if you don't have a goal in mind." So finally, she's like, 35 feet. I was like, "What does that look like?" And she's like, "What do you mean?" And it was like, "We're standing in the circle. Where's 35 feet?" She's like, "Well, I don't know." I said, "Then how are you gonna know when you get there?" And so I had her measure out 35 feet, and we put a cone out there. Now her best at that time was 31 feet. All I said was, "Now hit the cone." And she's like, how am I? Don't talk about it. Just hit the cone. Right? It took her 5 throws, but she ended up hitting the cone. She
Mm-hmm.
improved by 4 feet just from simply shifting her mind.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, I want you to tell it in your own words, but I'm assuming that's what happened with you. Once you started that positive self-talk, your body started to respond.
Yeah, I think it actually started the other way, that my body started to have experiences, because my work is very somatic, right? So my body started to have experiences first of like, oh, my body can relax, my body can breathe, my body can experience pleasure if somebody touches me. And once my body started responding, then my mind started shifting, right? Because yes, I think they are very related. They're obviously integrally related, but
Yes.
at least the way I work, I'm very, very sensitive to my body.
Yeah.
And so that's where things started inside of me. Like, oh, I can start to feel. And then my mind said, okay, now you can start to trust your body, because I didn't trust my body before. Are we still on? Because,
Yeah.
okay, because there's a white screen.
A white screen?
Yes, in front of me.
Oh no! It should just say like and
Like,
subscribe. It
subscribe.
shouldn't.
Oh, okay, great. All right, that
Okay.
was what happened.
Okay.
Sorry, threw me off.
It's all right. No
Yeah,
worries.
so I think that's what started to happen, right? Like my mind started trusting my body, because I didn't trust my body. I was very, very intuitive as a child and as a young adult and as a young woman or older woman, but I didn't trust that intuition. I hardly ever trusted my intuition. I didn't listen to myself. Once my body started to speak to me, then I realized, oh yeah, you've been talking to me all along. And my mind, my legal mind, has just been like talking you down, right? And that's what we do often. We talk ourselves down. Like, we have this intuitive feeling, we have this like sense that something is not right. Oh yeah, everything's fine, it's just fine, right? And I think that's the way a lawyer's brain works. Like, I'm going to try to litigate myself out of it.
Mm.
So that was a huge shift for me. That was my shift.
Okay. So how did you get started in doing what you're doing now?
Well, so I've been a sex and intimacy educator and coach for 15 years. That's when I started my training. Um, uh, it wasn't something I was expecting to do, but as I was like exploring tantra and sacred sexuality, which I got really interested in and even got certified in teaching, and as I started then working a little bit with clients, I at this point had left New York and moved all the way to the other side of the country to San Francisco. Um, I started to understand that I needed to know more. Like, okay, this is cool. Like, I know something about sacred sexuality and tantra, but I don't really understand the reactions that people are having. I don't understand the emotional context that underlies all of this. And, being a lawyer, like, I got to know it. I got to understand it. I want to study it.
Yes.
And so one door opened, the next door opened, the next door opened the next door, because I really wanted to understand not just the physical components around sexuality, but I really needed to understand the emotional components around sexuality and intimacy, because I, at the core, knew that that was the key to actually being able to help people heal what was going on in their bodies. We could work with sexual healing, but the relational part, that's different. And, as somebody who basically suffered both, a body feeling broken and, sexually really challenged, and also had like not a great relationship, like that was a part that I needed to heal for myself. And I also, I think Robert felt like, wow, what if there had been somebody like me, you know, 30 years ago when things started going south in our relationship, who could have really understood what I was going through. And maybe there was, and I just didn't know who to ask and, what to look for. What would that be like? And so I was really committed, and I still am, to helping couples, because I work with women as well. And in fact, the first book I wrote was all about healing, sexual healing for women. But the last 7 years, I've been really focused on working with couples in intimacy and helping couples who are told that they'll never be able to heal a sexless marriage, and so many people are in them, actually helping them heal that. Because that's what I would have wanted. That's what I would have needed. That could have changed the whole trajectory of my life.
So who tells these people this?
Who tells people what?
That they'll never heal from a sexless marriage?
Everybody. I mean, I mean, first of all, very few people are talking about it. That's part of the problem, right? It's not like, there's 100 people like me talking about sexless marriages on podcasts. I guarantee you that is not the truth, right? There's very, very few people who are talking about it. It's very pervasive because of all of the shame that people experience around sexuality. It's very hidden. So people don't talk about it very often. They might talk about it to their girlfriends. Maybe men will talk about it to male friends, but probably not. But most couples who are in sexless marriages end up divorcing. They end up separating and leaving because one or both of them can't handle it anymore.
Yes. Okay. So what's, like, obviously I don't want you to give away all your secrets, but just like, what's one of the first things that you help people overcome? I want to assume it's around communication.
It is. I think communication is key. I think one of the, I want to start with this. I think part of the problem that couples struggle with around sexual challenges is that they don't know how to start, and they don't know where to begin the conversation. And that's huge. Everybody just feels stuck, and they're afraid to, like, they're going to open up Pandora's box if they start that conversation, right? And so one of the tools that I've come up with that I think has been very helpful for couples is I've created what I call the, and it's basically understanding what your emotional equation is, right? Like what your intimacy equation is, which is your emotional equation, right? So looking at, like this little quiz that I have people take where they look at like, well, what is, are they somebody where intimacy is more about communication and emotional connection? Are they somebody whose intimacy is more about exploration and adventure? Are they somebody who intimacy is more about security and trust, right? Really understanding that formula is a great way to begin the conversation with your partner about what's going on here. It looks like, I took this little quiz and it looks like this is how I show up. How do you show up, right? Because it's a hard conversation to begin to have. And it's a great quiz. And by the way, that's a gift that everybody gets who gets a link to your podcast. But that's a really good place for people to start on communicating. Because if you just sit down and say like, hey, our sex life sucks, that's not going to go very well, right? There's going to be a lot of blame around that. There's going to be a lot of shame around that. There's going to be a lot of guilt around that. There's going to be a lot of defensiveness around that. So finding a way to start the conversation is like half of the battle. And that makes sense?
Yeah, see, I like that because like the whole time you were talking at the end there, that word was going through my mind was that the defenses go up when that happens.
Right.
You know, but having a way for them to get it all out and having the other person see it, because that's what happens. People will start talking, then the other person will jump in and cut them off, and they can't finish the whole thing. Then it turns into, well, why are you cutting me off? And then next thing you know, they're fighting over something that's not even that has nothing to do with the topic at hand. Because like I've actually had to have this conversation before in the past. Like we weren't in a sexless relationship, but it was hard to come by. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Like I had to have the conversation where it's like, look, am I doing something wrong here? Like what's happening? Because it really is an awkward conversation to have.
Right. So can I direct people just to the website to where they can take that quiz? Because I think that'll be
absolutely
helpful. Okay. So if you go to howtoimprove.com, you will see the intimacy equation quiz, and then you'll get a response. You know, it's a fun quiz, it's very short. And then you'll get a response as to what your intimacy formula is. And then you can say to your partner, hey, why don't you take the quiz, right? And begin to start to have that conversation, because it is a hard conversation to begin to have. And, you know, and the reason this is so important and why I came up with this tool is that underlying so many challenges in relationships, I'm sure you know this from a 13-year marriage, right, is communication and lack of emotional safety. Like, you know, that is a huge piece. You know, the second book that I wrote, which is it's coming out in March. So called
nice.
the Sex and Intimacy Repair Kit. And 2/3 of that book is around intimacy and how to repair intimacy and how to attune to your partner and how to have those hard conversations and the importance of creating emotional safety. Because if you don't feel emotionally safe with your partner, you're not going to open up to them about anything, but especially not about sex, right? And that's often like when I work with couples and I really when I look at like, well, what's happening underneath here? Like they're not having sex, right? Is it that there's something physical going on? A certain percent of the time that is a part of it, but the larger percent of the time, it's like, no, not having sex is really just a symptom of a relationship that's having challenges. And not having sex becomes a symptom, because if I'm not feeling emotionally safe with you, if I can't feel vulnerable, if I feel like I have to have obligation sex, if it's like the last thing on my checklist, I'm not going to do it. Right? That's the reality.
True. Very true. But I want you to break down emotional safety. It's like on the surface, like you hear the two words, you can figure out what it means, but I just want you to expand on it.
Okay, so when I think about emotional safety, I actually think about the word intimacy. So if you break down the word intimacy into its syllables, it's actually into me, see, into INTOMESEE. Not how you spell intimacy, but that's actually how it breaks down, right? And when I think about the word emotional safety, I think about being with a person where I can allow myself to be totally seen and understood and feel safe that that's not going to be used against me, that I'm not going to be manipulated. If I expose myself, if I take a risk and share something that's very, very vulnerable, maybe it's something about me, maybe it's something about a feeling I'm having about them, right? That person can hold that and honor it and not use that against me, because that's what happens a lot of times, right? Something gets used against you. You share something, you take a big risk, And taking risks are important in relationships. That creates the vulnerability, that creates the intimacy. But you take a big risk and share something, and then a week later, that gets thrown back in your face, and your partner tries to manipulate you with it, that information, right? Or uses it against you. That's not emotionally safe. I'm going to shut down. I'm not going to feel like I can express my true feelings. And in a healthy relationship, and I think this is a truth that a lot of people don't understand, is that in a healthy relationship, you're going to hurt your partner, you're going to hurt your romantic person who you love. But that is what happens in romantic relationships because we're really navigating two different nervous systems. That's what happens in a romantic relationship. There's attachment issues and there's nervous system issues, and we're navigating two different nervous systems that are trying to find an equilibrium with each other, desperately need an equilibrium to feel safe. But that doesn't
and that
always happen.
Yes, like that definitely happened. And I'll admit, like I'd say probably 10, 15 years ago, I was totally guilty of that because I'm the type of person, I don't let a lot of things bother me.
Mm-hmm.
So when something to me that would be considered minor bothered my significant other at the time, I wouldn't be able to understand it. I'd be like, really? You're gonna let that ruin your morning? And so as you were talking, that's what I was thinking of. I was like, wow, like she's describing what I used to do. Like, definitely.
Right. And that's what we all do. And, and in saying what you said, right, what you're doing, not intentionally, but this is what we do, is you're invalidating your partner's feelings. So she's trying to express something and you're like, that shouldn't bother you. Well, that actually invalidates their feelings. That's not emotionally safe. I'm not going to tell you what my feelings are anymore if they can't be heard, even if you maybe don't agree with them, because you have a different perspective than I do. And that's really one of the most common things that happens with couples, is that when we get in conflict, we're constantly invalidating each other's feelings. And that does not create emotional safety.
No, not at all. Yeah, I was talking with a friend the other day, and we would, because you just used the word perspective, and that's what I said. I was like, we don't have to agree 100% on everything. It's like we can have different points of view. It's like, this is my perspective, this is your perspective. Like, why are we going to spend time trying to force your perspective on me and vice versa? Like, that's not going to work. Like, if I like apples better than oranges, it's like, you can make the strongest case for oranges all you want to, but I like apples. And that's okay. But that's what happens in these conflicts. It's like you try to hammer down your point of view. Yeah. And if it's something that you just genuinely don't agree with, you know what? Listen, I respect the fact that you feel that way, but this is my take on it. And a lot of discussions have a hard time getting there because everybody wants to be right.
Yes, it's a huge issue that everybody wants to be right. And and I think you're hitting upon something that, I really emphasize in the work that I do with couples on my retreats and in my book, is that, the key to having a healthy relationship is the ability to be able to repair conflicts, and in a way that feels emotionally safe, right? And so many people can't do that. They don't have the skills to do it. Many, I'm not going to say most, but many couples therapists, that's not in their best interest to teach their couples how to repair conflicts, because they come to their office with the conflict, right? That's not my perspective. My perspective is like, I don't want to see you again. Like, I want to do, I want to have you for 13 hours and do an intensive retreat, and you're going to leave in so much of a better place. And then maybe we'll do some follow-up, but I want to teach you tools. That's the coaching model. I want to teach you tools so that you can learn how to do this yourself, because it's really, really important. And, in my own personal relationship, not like we don't have conflicts, and sometimes repair is challenging, but if we don't repair, things just go south really fast.
I'm so glad you said that, because like I'm at odds with one of my daughters, because she's been seeing a therapist for 3 years now and still dealing with the same problems. And so I was kind of getting on her. I was like, look, like, it's not in their best interest to heal you quickly. It's like you keep showing up with your insurance card and your copay, and they'll gladly keep taking you in. It's like it's one of those things that where you have to advocate for yourself. So of course she loves her therapist, so now she's just mad at me. But that's a separate conversation. But even physically, like I go to my physical therapist, and I'm like, all right, here's my timeline. Because I tell people, I'm like, they work for us. Right, not the other way around.
Right.
I said, here's my timeline. I need ABC. I can get here two times a week. How are we going to make this happen? Right. Because if not, they're going to drag it out as long as they can drag it out, or as long as insurance will allow. And I'm not going to say all of them, but a lot of them do that. So I go in ahead of time being like, look, this is how this is going down. Or else, again, they're going to just drag it out. So I'm glad that that's your approach. Get them in. Give them the tools, because there's no shortage of people out there who need your services or who need my services. There's no shortage, right? So being in this gym, there's always going to be a need for gyms. It just is.
Right. So, that is true.
So I want to give people.
AI will not, probably take over what you do. And hopefully, they try. It's trying to take over what I do, but you can't teach people how to touch each other. Can't do that yet.
All right. So talk about your retreats. So
what I've been doing this for 15 years, and I've worked with couples for quite a while. And I've had some experiences just in my own personal experiences, and then with some of my clients where, I've done a lot of long, immersive sort of week-long retreats in the Tantra world and sacred sexuality and other type of things. And I saw how incredibly transformative they were. And so I recognized that, I was pretty good with couples, but I just wasn't seeing the results that I wanted to see when I was working with them on a weekly basis. It was just different. And I decided, especially when I moved to Asheville, and I bought a home that has like a beautiful in-law suite that I made incredibly sexy, that what I'd like to do, because I love working in person with people immersively, and I actually started this during COVID, was to do long-term, 4-day retreats. I started out as weekend retreats, and then I realized not enough time. And so when people come and see me in Asheville, we work over a 3.5-day to 4-day period, sometimes 5 days if they're really struggling. And my work, because it's very somatic, which means it's very body-based, it's very experiential and very interactive. So we might talk about, the issues that they're having, of course, in their marriage, in their relationship, but we're going to start doing like practices and exercises, and I'm going to teach them tools to be able to use to help them solve some of the issues that they're actually having. So whether it's I'm teaching how to have a repair conversation, again, very important tool, or I'm teaching them different ways of touch, because so many times, nobody teaches us how to have sex, and nobody teaches us how to touch or be touched. In fact, I had a couple here, they just left. He's 70 years old, and I taught him something. And he was like, wow, Xanet, I'm so embarrassed. I've been doing this wrong for 70 years. And I was like, you're not doing anything wrong. It's like, who taught you how to have sex? Who taught you how to touch? Nobody, right? Nobody teaches us these skills. And so they just get maybe we pick stuff up from the movies or TV, or at that time, Playboy magazine, right? Now it's porn and social media, but still, nobody actually teaches you the different types of touch that are available and different mindset around it. And so I actually teach people that. So I give them very, very different experiences, and they get to experiment. And this becomes like a playground in here where we get to try new things. And that's amazing for people to have completely different experiences around intimacy, have completely different experiences around sexuality, to understand their, like I said, the quiz, right? To understand their intimacy blueprint. a formula, and what does that actually mean, and how do they relate to their partner, because they're very, very different, which is not uncommon because we're usually attracted to the opposite, right? But there's beautiful integration possible. So the retreats go very, very deep on communication, on connection exercises, on touch exercises. And then if a couple has a lot of struggles, which many do, because I'm often like the last resort. We've been to therapists, we've been to sex therapists, we've been to workshops. Nothing's really made a difference, and I do come in and make a difference. And then sometimes we really spend a lot of time just dealing on the emotional issues and the relationship issues, and how do we repair that as well, teaching vulnerability and creating emotional safety and what that feels like and what it feels like in your body when you're feeling like you're flowing with your partner, as opposed to it being so like herky jerky. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm just curious, do you ever get new couples?
I do. Yeah,
Okay.
I sometimes do. It's not like my bread and butter.
Yeah.
Maybe that's because of the way I market it, my backstory. I think I tend to get couples that are just curious and want to explore, who tend to come to my international retreat. So I run a group retreat. I have one actually
Yep.
coming up in February. Um, and those tend to be couples that are just like, we're having a good sex life, but it could be better. We want to try different things. We want to explore more. We want to, we want to rekindle the passion, kind of thing. So I definitely do get that.
Okay.
Occasionally I get younger couples, but not as often, just because the investment. But sometimes I often will get, couples this is their second marriage or their third marriage, and they want to start off on a different foot.
Yeah, that's what made me ask. So
Yeah.
just curious, because like I'm 51 now, and if I ever decide to start dating again, it's like I would, because you end up falling back into the old
You
habits.
do. We should come see.
So it'd be, yeah, like when and if the time comes, I'm kind of liking being single. So we'll see, we'll see where it goes. Right. All right. So let's talk about your books, and then we'll start to bring this down.
Yeah. So I have two books. The book that came out in 2018 is called Living an Orgasmic Life: Heal Yourself and Awaken Your Pleasure. And that book is a lot about my own, in a lot of detail and a lot of vulnerability, my own personal story of how I got to where I was then in 2018. As well as some of the principles around. The first half of the book is around sexual healing and the blocks to sexuality that primarily women experience, although there's lots of stories about men in the book as well. And the second part of the book is, how do you start to reclaim your pleasure? And then my book that's coming out now in March is called The Sex and Intimacy Repair Kit. And that book is how to enhance communication and create a lifetime of passionate intimacy. And the focus on that book is really on creating first the emotional safety, the intimacy that we're all really, really looking for. And then some of the mindset shifts around sexuality, I really struggled with it, right? Because I could have written like 20 chapters on it, but I decided just to pick 3 things on sexuality because there's so many other great books about that. But I think this book actually is a very different tact, because I basically drop the readers into what's it like to be in a coaching session with me. So, it's a very, there's a couple here, they're having their struggles, and we're actually having interactions and dialogue that's going on as there are teaching points. So it's a very dynamic book, and I'm super excited about it.
Awesome. Sounds great. All right.
Yeah,
So let people know where they can get in touch with you, where they can find your books, and then I'll ask you for a final word.
absolutely. Well, you can find all my books on Amazon. The best way to get in touch with me is go go to that quiz I just told you about, howtoimprovemylovelife.com, howtoimprovemylovelife.com. And not only will you be able to take the quiz, you'll also have a way to contact me. And of course, I'll be in contact with you.
Perfect. All right. And some final words?
Final words. I think final words for everybody, I always like to say is that pleasure is your birthright. Like, we are entitled as human beings to have pleasure in our bodies and experience that. And if you're not experiencing pleasure in your body, if you're sexually shut down, if you've experienced trauma, then I think you need to go and get some help. There's a lot of people out there who can help you. But I do believe that pleasure is our birthright.
Yeah, when you said that, I was like, I think one of the comments said that. That was why I put that up there really quick. So awesome. Well, thank you very, very much for taking the time.
Thank you, Bob.
If you wanna come back again and be a part of one of my panels, which I haven't done one all year, but I plan on doing more in 2026. But I bring back up to 6 of my guests, and we take one. Yeah, let me pull it up. We take one topic and we go round table around the one topic. Like this one was embracing vulnerability, and there were 5 of us, because I like people to understand that there's not just one way to look at something or to view something, and we get up to 7 different points of view on one topic. So if something like that interests you, let me know, and I'll keep you in the mix.
I would love to do that. Yeah, I'd love to do that.
Okay.
I love doing that. I love doing those kind of things.
All right. And so what I do is I pick the guest first. And then once I have the guest solidified, then I'll pick a topic that I know all of you can speak on, because I've interviewed you all.
Put me down.
All right. Awesome. Sounds great. Well, thank you again, and I'll be in touch.
Thanks, Robert. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
You've been listening to Shut Up and Grind. We hope you've gotten some useful and practical information from this show. Robert has over 20 years experience pouring his knowledge and expertise at many events in the service and fitness industry, as well as secondary schools and universities. He has a true passion for helping others break through the barriers that are holding them back. To book Robert B. Foster to speak or to reach out, go to robertbfoster.com. Till next time, shut up and grind.